I am a carer for my husband Brian. We have been married for 42 years and together for 50. December 2016, he was diagnosed with a condition called Sjogren's syndrome. It's a rare blood disorder. It's now known as AGPA, eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis. And from that day on, our lives were turned upside down. Both of us were fearful and anxious. It was as if we had been abandoned by everybody in a strange land we knew nothing about. We didn't know the language, we didn't know anything. We were both overwhelmed and powerless and fearful and anxious and depressed. Brian's mobility was much reduced. He could no longer walk without a walking aid. He needed a wheelchair if we were going out anywhere. He had lost his independence. He couldn't go out on his own. He was a great man for walking, walked all over the town, had been very fit and very healthy. And this was just totally, his world had totally changed, as had mine. The realisation came to me one day, and it was a strange one, but it said it all, that I would never hear his key in the front door again because he would never be out independently again. That was a hard one. The occupational therapist who was assigned to us was excellent. She was matter-of-fact, practical, helpful, all the things that she needed to be to do her job. She assessed Brian and said that he would need a lift going from the floor right up through the ceiling, and that she would approve him for that, and one of his consultants did as well. But we had to wait 10 months for that. I'm told that's not a long time. For that 10 months, Brian was downstairs. We just got used to it, and it's my experience in life, you can get used to anything if you keep on doing it. So he was happy, he was contented, he had his own space, and as we waited for the lift. And I got used to doing the medication. We had an excellent pharmacist, an independent pharmacist who's more than helpful, more than kind over the years, and answers my queries, delivers Brian's meds to the house and helps us out as much as he can. I got used to doing the medication. I got used to having a new routine around the house, and Brian had carers for the first time. He didn't want carers, but his thing was, oh, but your Catherine's here. But the social worker was very good, and she said, well, what happens if Catherine gets sick, Brian? And, you know, you need a backup here. So he was very compliant with that, and our carers were excellent, and that has worked out fine. Life had changed utterly because it became a continual round of appointments. I couldn't take this on board. There were letters arriving all the time. He needed appointments to see consultants. He needed appointments for scans. He needed appointments for tests, for podiatry, for everything. 1 month, Brian had 17 hospital appointments. Like 17, you know, there's people think if they have 3 in a year, he had 17 in 1 month. It became very complicated because an appointment at the hospital is a half a day. By the time he gets ready and by the time we get over there and wait and see the doctor and hear and the news and what have you, do tests and whatever, and get home, that's half a day. It was exhausting. It was complicated because I don't drive. So you can imagine life took on a totally different face to the one that we had. We had left that life behind, really. I think now, looking back with hindsight over the 8 years, my main role in Brian's life, I'm his carer, but I'm also his advocate. He's dealing with a multiplicity of issues that at times can drain his energy. He has had 3 long stays in hospital in the 8 years. He had one just previously in the summer for 10 weeks. He had part of his toe amputated and developed an infection in the bone and was in hospital for 10 weeks and became very ill. The antibiotics took an awful lot out of him. And again, I thought, you know, as I said now, he had delirium, he had weakness, he lost mobility. He was just very ill. Somehow or other, he has been restored to us again. And he fought back every inch of the way. He's back home now and he's doing very well. These, I call them our rodeos. These rodeos happen. It's the nature of the illness. 2022 was a bad year. Brian is immunosuppressed and we were in Altnagelvin A&E 10 times. Tell you what, once in A&E is enough for anybody. We were there 10 times. The conditions were awful. Staff were wonderful. They were valiant, courageous, absolutely tremendous. But the conditions were awful. I could write a book about that, about experiences I had and experiences I saw. I put the story up on Care Opinion, which is a website where you can outline your experiences in hospital. And I got an answer from the ward manager. My username was Leopard33, and I think I was her worst nightmare. And I often thought if I ever meet her, I'm going to say to her, I'm Leopard33. That's who I am, in case you're wondering. I also wrote a personal letter to Neil Guggian, the CEO, the Western Trust, and outlining just the experience Brian had and the experience of the staff there and how I felt it just was not acceptable. I got Mark Durkin to ask a cross-party group in Stormont for rare diseases before Stormont fell that time about was there such a thing as a safe space for immunosuppressed patients to be triaged? Told there should be, and where possible. So of course it's not possible, so it doesn't happen. So kind of a visual person, visual learner, I could nearly see the germs flying about that A&E, crowded with people and the doors shut and people not wearing masks and all of that. It was absolutely dreadful. I think probably that galvanised me. I thought, no, this can't be right. When Brian was in hospital, I kept a very close eye on his care. Every day, I'm sure I was a nuisance, I asked, how's he doing? Who's in charge of his care? What were his bloods like today? How are things going? What did he eat? How was he? I felt at least in somebody's eyes, I was his advocate and I was keeping an eye on things. I felt better for doing that. I learned as much as I could about EGPA. My mother used to always say, knowledge is power, and she was right. Learned as much as I could, did as much research as I could, discovered over the years that I was explaining things to junior doctors. I'm not a medical person. They would look at me blankly when I would say, is EGPA. Felt that knowledge is power. I felt too that if he was admitted to A&E, which he was, out of those 10 times, he was admitted probably about 9 times to the hospital, spent time in A&E in the cubicle, which if you're in A&E and you are sitting in a seat, or he was in a wheelchair and I was in a seat, and he was getting his antibiotics in the wheelchair on a stand, hooked up to him, with all this mayhem going on around him. Just a cubicle now, a basic cubicle with a trolley bed. It's like the Hilton Hotel. You just feel, what wouldn't I give to have a bed for Brian to lie down on? In those forays into A&E, I have refused to take him home. I discovered that I can do that. I was told he's being discharged today. I knew he wasn't well. I knew he's just not well. I can't take this man home. And a young doctor said to me, but he's fine, he's fine. I said, has he seen a rheumatologist? And he said, I don't know what a rheumatologist could do. No, yeah. And I said, well, do you know what? I know what a rheumatologist could do. I heard myself saying this politely, but firmly. I would like my concerns noted now, dated and signed by you, that my husband has not seen a rheumatologist and I do not wish to take him home. My husband saw a rheumatologist. There were other occasions where I refused to take him home. His INR reading was going up and they wanted to send him home. And a young doctor again, I said to him, can you assure me that my husband won't have a crisis tonight, looking at the trajectory that those bloods are going in? And he said, oh, no. But sure, if there's a crisis, you can phone an ambulance. And I thought, is he real? Is he for real? This is the A&E rodeo all over again. This is where we go to. And I remember just saying to him, no, I'm not taking him home until his bloods until that INR has come down. And I didn't take him home, and his INR did come down, and then he did go home. You're not totally powerless. You think you are, but you're not. And I found that at times I am resolute. I am never impolite. I am always polite I'm always calm, I'm always respectful, but if I see something that is wrong or I see something that Brian needs, I just keep going until he gets it, you know. And if this person can't give it to me, then I just say, could I speak to the ward manager, or could I speak to the consultant, or could I speak to... So that's the way we work it. I keep a diary and I check it out now and again. I keep all his letters from the consultants, obviously, keep a file on it. And the last question I always ask the consultants is, when is Brian's next review? And if they say to me, well, we'll say 4 months, but if you need us, you can phone us. So I go home and I write down 4 months from that date. In my diary, I write down Brian's next review. And if I don't hear anything about it, I phone the consultant secretary. Now, I have to say, the consultant secretaries are extremely helpful. We have met wonderful medical personnel who take a great interest in him and whose skill and dedication are wonderful. I keep a suitcase packed and ready behind the bedroom door upstairs with everything he needs in it, just in case, because often we have had to phone the ambulance in the middle of the night. Because he's immunosuppressed, he would have opportunistic infections, and these can strike out of the blue, literally. Just, you know, he's okay 1 minute and the next minute he's shaking, and I was told that this means the bacteria are flooding this bloodstream, so I have to get help straight away. So it's handy for me if it's 4 in the morning and I'm half awake. The suitcase is there. I leave a whole list of his medications written in it as well, plus an outline of what EGPA is for the paramedics. And they have said that this is helpful in the number of occasions that we've had to call them.